this thing is not, it's bothering my soul, but you know what, it is what it is. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alana, and on this channel, we review books. By the time this video goes up, this video will actually be going live on December 31st. Burping. And so, can you believe it? Can you believe it? I feel like I just recorded one of these where I go over my top reads of the year. And here we are at the end of the last day of 2023. I can't say I'm sad to see it go. It was ghetto. It was a ghetto year. There were some highlights, but there were some lowlights, some real lowlights. But you know, it was one of my most ghetto years in recent years, but that's okay. Never would have made it. Okay. Anyway, it's over. Let's hope 2024 is better. I have a headache, so if I'm a little wonky, bear with me. I read 50 books this year, which has been average for me within the ballpark over the past, I would say, since 2021 or so. Last year, I think I read about 54 books. The year before that, it was 52. And I actually anticipated reading more than that. The last quarter of the year, my reading slowed down a lot. For some good reasons, but also because my brain was fried. Work in particular was the busiest that it had ever been for me in the position that I'm in now in 4.5 years. And it was just nonstop. And I would sometimes come home from work and stare at a wall. So I don't know what was going on, but it was just the last quarter of the year in particular was just nonstop. And so my focus was not that good. And it is what it is. So what? Again, it is what it is. So let's dive into these 6 books. Out of the 50 books that I read, I only rated 5 of them a 5 out of 5, which is lower for me. Usually it's around 10. This year it was 6. So, and 2 of them were rereads. So there's that. But these are a really good 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through them, but I'm going to save the top 3 for last. So the first ones I'm going to go over, the first 2 I'm going to go over rather, were the rereads. I have a rule. My top 3 reads of the year are not allowed to be rereads because I know what I'm anticipating. I know what I'm getting myself into. So yeah, my top 3 have to be new to me within that year. This is the first book that I read and finished in 2023. Diana Gabaldon's Dragonfly Amber, which is the second installment of Outlander. The first time I read this was in 2015 into 2016, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't. I was heading into a reading slump, so there's a lot that I missed. And this time around, again, I'm not going to belabor any one of these books. I have reviews on each and every one of these books, and I will hopefully remember to put those links down below. But Diana Gabaldon is such a smart writer. Why am I holding this? Boop. Don't fall. Diana Gabaldon is such a smart writer. And again, I think because of how it was, the Outlander series was categorized as a romance for so long. Now it's under general fiction, and I think for good reason. It is way more than this relationship between Jamie and Claire, okay? It is way more than Claire getting catapulted back into the 1740s in the Highlands of Scotland, and she meets this man who looks like a Viking, and they just want to rip each other's clothes off. That's not what's happening. Well, that does happen, but that's just, I have said this time and time again, if you take that out, the story still stands. Diana Gabaldon is very, very smart, and this book in particular has a lot in common with War and Peace. I will link my review down below, but Gabaldon, in a nutshell, does an expert job of asking this very philosophical question: can you change history, or is history inevitable? She's particularly talking about Jacobite rebellions here, the Jacobite rebellion that I think is most well known, but that is the question that she's asking, because Claire is from the future, and her and Jamie are attempting to change the outcome of history. Can you do that, or are you just tampering too much? What is the rule here? What are the rules? Is there such thing as inevitability? All that stuff. So, and she's also a fun writer. She's excellent at showing and not telling. She has some of the most dynamic characters I've ever read. She makes Jamie in particular way more complex than I think he needs to be. It's so easy to make him as the male lead just survive off of being attractive. That's boring. Jamie is incredibly complex. He's incredibly funny, but he's also a very challenging character to read. He's a challenging character to read at times. He is very, very flawed. But this book is highly intelligent, and I love that I feel like Diana Gabaldon has read War and Peace, and she's paying homage to it. That's why this is a top read of the year. Because reading this, I read this directly after War and Peace. It was a treat. Number 2, a reread. Game of Thrones. The first book, I enjoyed this so much. This was a reread. The first time I read it again. 2014, 2015, I was slumping, right? My reading was slumping. There was a lot going on. And I just didn't appreciate it the first time around. And I liked it, but something just didn't click. This was compulsive. I flew through it, and my reread of it was like, okay, I'm going to finish the rest of the series. So I will be reading the second book of this, rereading. I don't remember anything of the second book. I was in such a haze during that time in my life, but it's just fun. It's politicking and funky characters, and we don't know all of this mythical, fantastical world that Martin is setting up here. The others. Ooh. So I'm not even gonna, I know I talked a lot about Dragonfly and Amber. It's Game of Thrones. It's iconic. We know what Game of Thrones is, right? Okay. One of the most infamous fantasies out there. It was just such a joy to read. I didn't even annotate it a whole lot. It was just fun. Good fun. That's what you need every now and then. Number 3. I thought this was going to be my third top read of the year. It got bumped out. But Butcher's Crossing by John Williams. I'm a massive fan of John Williams. His book Stoner is one of my favorite classics of all time. It's in the top 10. Butcher's Crossing is really a Western, and we have a young man who goes with 3 others out buffalo hunting, bison hunting, Tatanka hunting. If you know where Tatanka comes from, holler in the comments down below. Why the name Tatanka? It's a Native American word, but anyway. And then I'm giving the answer away. The movie Dances with Wolves, I think, made it more mainstream. But so we have this young man, Will, who goes out buffalo hunting in Colorado, and it changes him. He's from Boston, and it's really, there are a lot of those similar themes that we get with Williams in Stoner. It's a bit existential, but it's also just gorgeous nature writing. John Williams is such a stud, okay, with his writing. And how Will has this transformation when he goes out to the West. So, if you liked Stoner, I think you'll like Butcher's Crossing. If you like Westerns, you would like this. If you're not into Westerns, I barely read Westerns. This might be the first Western I've ever read, actually. It is like a philosophical Western, you know? And it's not cowboys and natives and that kind of thing. It's very different. This is a story that feels almost claustrophobic, because you just have these 4 men in a very limited space, and they spend the majority of it waiting out the winter. So that's the thing. They go out buffalo hunting because they're trying to get these hides so they can get wealthy, and they get stuck in the Colorado winter. So they have to stay there, and they wait it out. And it is Williams' ability to create such a small claustrophobic environment makes it somehow feel large. If you've read this book, you know what I'm saying. So good. Highly recommend, especially if you've read Stoner and liked it. I might try to read Augustus next year. That is Williams. It's historical fiction on Caesar. Augustus Caesar. So yeah, Julius Caesar. Sorry. I have a headache, so I might be saying something crazy. But I've heard that book is phenomenal. But I don't own it yet. But I'm having a video coming about my 2024 reading plans, and some of you may be shocked. I'm scaling it back a lot. In third place, Elena Ferrante's My Brilliant Friend. I thought it was going to be Butcher's Crossing, but then when I was going over my 5 stars again, This one is over Butcher's Crossing by a hair. I mean, by the skin of its teeth. This book, it is a quartet, the Neapolitan Quartet, and the only reason that I had to base this one off emotion, to be honest, because when I finished this book, I was like, I need to read the second one immediately, but I didn't. I was strong. I held fast. This book, this coming of age, Elena Ferrante, I can't even, this book is so expertly written. I get why it is so loved. I mean, we get these Leela, we get her Leela growing up during, it's post-World War II Italy. She's really in Naples. And the horrors of the environment that she's in, and it's a violent environment, but still, as she's coming of age, there is this, how does Ferrante do it? She's writing about these crazy things, but it's done in a way that isn't vexing. And there's still a nostalgia to it. Such a good book. I get the hype. I think the hype is worth it. Again, I'm not going to go on and on and on. I have reviews. So if you're curious about any of these books, again, look in the description box below. But this one had to take the cake because the writing was so evocative. I will say it lingered a little bit more in my memory than Butcher's Crossing did. And still, Butcher's Crossing is phenomenal. But that's why this one took the cake in third place. Number 2. Megumi Kawakami's Breast and Eggs. This was a book that I wasn't sure how I was going to get on with it. It is her most popular book. It was her first book that was published in English for the English market. And Megumi Kawakami is currently one of Japan's most well-known prolific contemporary authors. And I think for good reason. I haven't read her other works, but she is a gorgeous, gorgeous writer. There are some absolutely stunning passages in this book. And this is a book that is very feminine. And by feminine, I don't mean feminist, though some people say it's feminist work. Megumi Kawakami will tell you it is not. But by feminine, I mean it is this emphasis on the female body, female insecurities, but it's not done in a way that feels preachy. You know what I mean? It's very real. I think that male or female, I know men who have read this book and they get on with it. We have all thought things about ourselves and we have insecurities. And so it is an element of that. But also it is a book about loneliness. Our main character. So our main character, Natsuko, she's very lonely. She has no one. I mean, she does have her sibling, say her sister. She does have a niece. Their mother has since passed, but she's not in a relationship. She doesn't have children, and she desires to have a child. But she's entering into this stage of her life where if she doesn't do this soon, that opportunity is going to be gone. But also, she's thinking, well, what does that look like? How do I make that happen? How do I find someone I want to have a child with? And so she's looking at she's contemplating the rest of her life. And what does that life look like? Is it lonely? Is there going to be somebody present? Even though she wants a child, but she doesn't really want the romantic relationship with a man. So she's in this really weird space. And so it's just done in a way that's so interesting. And it's hard to explain. Megumi Kawakami, she has, like most Japanese authors, there's a poetry to the writing, and she would write these sentences, and I'm like, dang, woman. It's just, you don't even have to agree with all of these characters. It's just done in a way that's just so profound. I became a fan. This book was so good. I didn't want it to end, and I have Heaven by her and All the Lovers in the Night. I haven't read those yet. I plan to hopefully knock out one, if not both, next year. They're slim volumes, but Breast and Eggs, again, review down below, because she talks a lot about how bodies keep the score, in a sense. You could argue that. there's a lot of conversations about death, again, loneliness, relationships, parenthood, but in that very subtle, quiet, quintessentially Japanese way. I love Japanese fiction. It's some of my favorite. Okay. And if you've been keeping up with all of my reviews this year, this one will be no surprise. Haruki Murakami's Q-Teen84 Player, top read of the year. I was not anticipating this to be the top read of the year. This book, I read it in July. I knocked this 1,000 pager out in 27 days. It was addictive to me because it is everything I love in a book. It's twisted. It's politically incorrect. That's my thing. It talks about control and autonomy and free will and how the system's screwing us over and how we're all essentially in a matrix. Man, that's my jam. And it's so expertly written. There is not a grammatical error in this book. It is so smart. How the world building, it's a sci-fi fantasy dystopian. What? And an unrequited love story. Like, he threw it all in there. And I know this is Marmite for some people. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I'm in the love it camp. And it's so good. It's so good. Again, I have a 20-something minute review down below, but this is my top read of the year because it is so intelligent and it combines the topics that I love the most. And it was, again, so smart. It is one of those books that will leave you asking more questions because it's so good. Did I continue to get crooked? Come on, man. Whatever. So Q-Teen84 had to take the cake. So good. So good. Yeah, there's a lot of weird sex scenes in it, but that didn't bother me because it just didn't bother me. I get why it bothers people, but it didn't bother me because it was so clinical. But anyway, that's it. Those are my top 6 reads of the year out of the 50 books that I read, with Q-Teen84 taking the cake at the top. Have you read any of these books? And maybe you hated them. That's okay. What were your top reads of the year? And were any of your top reads of the year surprising to you? I am going to wrap it up. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Also, please feel free to follow me on Instagram where I get up to more bookish shenanigans. That's all I'm going to say. See you in the next one. Bye.